Good evening, everybody. It's Monday, June 21st, 2021. My name is Mike Langford, and welcome back to another episode of DearBands Live. The podcast explores the paths and stories of career-minded artists and music industry professionals. My guest tonight, singer, songwriter, and guitarist based out of Ottawa, Ontario, a member of Canadian rock band The Red Rails, whose sound and style have been compared to acts such as Them Crooked Vultures, Alice in Chains, and Death from Above 1979. Also a founding member of hard rock band Down in Ashes, who despite being on hiatus since 2012, still have over 60,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, thanks in part to their songs Beautiful Ghost and Awake off their last EP entitled Veins. He's the one in your circle of friends that will help you move the couch and won't eat the last slice of pizza before offering it to everybody else. Easily a fan favorite in any music scene. Please welcome my guest tonight, vocalist, guitarist, and songwriter, Kim Vincent.
Hey,
Kim.
Mike. That was quite the intro, man.
I try. I try.
I love it. Man. I love the little jazzy music in the back. Beautiful.
That's my comfort music.
Awesome.
Because I feel awkward when there's nothing there. How's it going?
It's going good, man. It's going good. I can't complain. How about you?
It's going okay.
And thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
I'm just glad the weather is like overall good now, as far as being able to get back outside.
Yeah, no, it's summer. You know, summer. I think landed 11:30 last night. I think it was actually summer, and it's summer. It's nice and hot. I don't complain about the heat. You know, I just think about winter, and then I'm in my good place.
Well, that's the thing. The way things have been the last year, the idea of just like been cooped up inside.
Yeah.
And the idea where we can actually get outside again. So not taking it for granted. That is for sure.
Yeah. And we can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, you know?
Yes.
Looking good.
There's that too. I haven't seen you in like forever, it feels like.
I don't think I had any facial hair the last time I saw you either. You know? Things are changing. Yeah.
So I think the last time might have been one of the music festivals you were in town for.
Yeah, maybe a CMW, or I'm not even sure. Indie Week, maybe. I'm not sure, actually.
But no, it's good to see you. Look like you're doing well.
Yeah, likewise, man.
So anything new these days? Anything going on?
You know what? Like musically, I gotta say, it's been just a break, and I think just going from my past band Down in Ashes and then the Red Rails, like just jumping right into it, and then all of a sudden, we had a show that was slated for middle of March, and literally, it had been declared a pandemic, and our show got canceled right away. It was a toss-up. We didn't have to, but I think everybody sort of realized, okay, everything's shutting down. Let's just, and ever since then, we haven't done anything. I mean, my bass player's out in Newfoundland, and I think one time we were. It's kind of funny because the guys they wanted to do let's have a little jam over the network, and then we were like, okay, well let's do it. Let's do this thing. So we all get there. Okay, let's do it at 7:00 or whatever, and then we all dial each other up. We're all just like, okay, how do we do? No, I think we need an interface. I think everybody needs some sort of interface here. We can't do anything. All right, see you guys. But we have our band chat, and we talk all the time, and it'll be nice to get back to it, once things are more open and things are looking that way. So it won't be long. I know Chris, my bass player, he's coming back in August, so we can start getting some jams together and start playing music again. I have no calluses left. I grab the acoustic off the wall every once in a while, and I play some riffs and some jams. I was playing Mother Hayloft. I don't know, it's such a cool riff. I don't know. But no, I was jamming on that, and then just jamming on some Beatles stuff, and yeah, that's it. I mean, musically, it's like I said, it's actually been nice because I never really had that break. It's just been a constant working towards something, rehearsing for something, writing for the next release, always doing something, and it's just it's kind of it's just been a nice break, honestly.
You're not alone. A lot of musicians have mentioned that the break's been kind of nice. You know, just that breath that kind of opened up, just in order to step away from it a little bit. Because especially in the beginning, I will mention, I was digging through some of the socials, and I see with Red Reels, there's that show in March that got canceled. And the thing is, it's like so much of this has been documented, like this whole experience. And the band, like bands in March in particular, where like things started to slow down and shut down. It's like you see those posts where like there's still like a lot of hope that it's gonna be really quick, you know, as far as like getting back to things. But
2
like,
weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah, and it's like what we know now versus how it was back then, how things just kind of slowed down. So
yeah,
you know, digging through some of those posts and stuff from other bands and artists, like it I don't know, it kind of hits me a little bit, because it's just like, again, with musicians, artists, it's like we're as you're saying, like we're constantly looking maybe 2, 3, 6 months ahead, a year ahead, and then it just slowed down, but never having a chance to really just stop for a second and reevaluate everything.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I was thinking about John Lennon. You know, he took like a 5-year hiatus, you know, and just like was a dad, you know, for a while. You're talking about one of the biggest artists, you know, and that seemed like it, you know, it did a lot for him and his mental health and all that stuff. And it's just like, it's been similar, you know, just to take a break from music in general. It's just gives you a little bit of breathing room and like time to actually, you know, you want it even more, you know, when you don't have it for so long. It's just, and I really feel too for all the, you know, the venues that got shut down, and all the, you know, when I was watching some of my friends and musicians, and they're doing like pay, and, you know, people pay to play, like donate online stuff. And I'm just like, oh man, that was heartbreaking, you know, to watch that, just people struggling, you know. And yeah, man,
It's been tough for the venues.
Yeah.
Hands down. Because it was already tough, you know, for a lot of the venues. Like, not to dig into their business model, but like some of their margins were pretty narrow to begin with. And the idea when things all got shut down, I could go on and on about this. And, you know, one of my things too, that really did bother me was like bands and artists that were trying to do live stream concerts in some of these venues. Because the idea where you could probably rent the venue out, and venues could have put some cameras in, and they could have built a rig in there for bands to go in and perform and broadcast it. And like how that was deemed unsafe, you know, and I didn't agree with some of that, because it's like, well, because my not to rant about it, but like you can have pyro at a show, and you just make sure you have the proper like licensed professionals around to oversee it to make sure it's okay. So like you can light 20% of a venue on fire, and as long as someone's there to go, no, this is okay. But it's like it wasn't okay to have a few people in a venue to perform and broadcast it with very, very minimal crew in there. I think that would have helped a lot. Anyways, I'm not going to rant about that.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
you know,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, even the venue that our show that was scheduled for March 2020, that venue actually, they're gone, you know. It's and a few others in Ottawa actually, just like they shut down. But yeah, it's but you know, with that being said, there's been some other venues that you see they're like coming back to life, like, you know, Mavericks and Cafe de Cup they're doing stuff there, like redoing it. And I don't know, I think it's, you know, it's sort of like when there's large forest fires, you know, and then after that all settles, you know, life sort of trickles in after. And I hope it's going to be sort of more the same, you know, with our venues and whatnot. I know I got some glare here. I'm just trying.
It's all good. Audio's good. That's the important part. That's actually on the topic of venues still. There's so many venues needed repairs, renos, like needed a facelift here and there. So hopefully the little break there, you know, financials aside, hopefully the break allowed to do that. Because I imagine there's some venues that are just like, we really need to redo the washroom here.
Yeah,
and
but we can't shut down for a few days.
We can't have bathrooms for 2 weeks.
I mean, the thought of shutting down business for 2 weeks to do renos is actually scary. But, you know, if you've had to have been shut down, you know,
that was the time.
What better time to do that? Yeah.
All right, we can keep chatting about venues, but So as you as a musician, I'm curious, like how did you get started into music? With first instrument? Was there a family member? Was
Well, you know what? I actually got into music mostly, and so my parents had this old school, they had a lot of old vinyl and stuff, and they had Abbey Road. And I don't know, for whatever reason, they didn't really play that record that much, but I was drawn to it for some reason, the Beatles. And I kind of vaguely knew who they were, but I didn't. But I remember I'd never actually like spun a record or actually knew how to do it. But I just figured it out. You put the thing here, you put the needle on, and then all of a sudden Abbey Road played, and I was like, wow. And I started getting it, and I just listened to that whole record front to back. And then right around that time, it was so I was in my early teens, like maybe 13, 14. And I think right around that time, like the Beatles anthology came out on TV, and it was like this 3-day, 2-hour each special thing.
I remember that.
And you got to watch the whole thing of how everything went down, and I just was so, I just like their music, like grabbed me so much. And I wanted to learn how to play guitar because of that. And my dad actually bought me a Mexi Strat from Steve's Music here in Ottawa, and I played it a little bit, but it sort of like sat for a month. But then after that month, like I just picked it up and I wouldn't stop. I had a book. I kind of went through it and I kind of learned everything in this book. And then I learned a lot by ear, And then after that, yeah, it was just I just got into Zeppelin 2, and I got into a lot of that like classic rock kind of stuff. And then after that, I got into like a friend of mine showed me some Metallica actually, and I got into that like a lot. That's all I played for like I think a bunch of other people my age. That's all you played in music almost for a while. It's like because the riffs were so easy, like they're easy, they're accessible. You could play it, and it was kind of a cool. Yeah, I don't know. It just had an aggression to it. That you kind of liked, and I don't know. I went down that road for a while, so that's where I got more of the hard rock kind of stuff. But yeah, like originally it was more. Yeah, it was just like the Beatles got me into music really.
So you're one of like people when you're putting ads up for other bands to play and stuff, like you're inspired by the Beatles and Metallica.
And
you're like, okay,
something like that. Yeah. I just loved all the melodies and stuff though with the Beatles, and I remember because I wasn't singing back then, and that's how I started singing along with the melody, and then I literally, because that's all I used to listen to with the Beatles. But when I wanted to learn harmonies, I think for a solid year, I would listen to the Beatles music, and all I would do was sing along with the harmonies and just like pick up on that third and that, whatever. And then I was able to, pick it up really good to almost anything that, there wasn't even any music, and I can sing the harmony to it, and, I will say George Harrison, he's undercredited for that. He always had the harder harmony to sing. It's almost like buried in there, and it's not even like a natural harmony you'd actually sing. He's always got the weird one for some reason. I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, man, he got the hard stuff. but yeah, that's really in terms of singing, yeah, I sort of learned guitar first, and then, when you're playing music and nobody else is singing, you just start singing. With some other people, you get together with some people. One guy plays this, one guy plays that. No one's singing. Well, I'll give it a shot.
So this is in high school?
Yeah.
Start jam with people?
Yeah, high school. And we used to, I used to jam with an old friend of mine, actually, Jeremy Stroud. We had a few bands actually called Raw Power, Dodger, but we used to play all these cover bands, and he was really into like all this cool, like when I think about it now, I'm like, man, he was into Iggy Pop and all this stuff, and we were playing all this, David Bowie, and just, I don't know, we were playing some cool stuff. Like I think like on the radio at the time, we could have been playing all this sort of sappy, I don't even know what was on the radio, but it definitely wasn't Iggy Pop. So he had a really kind of eclectic background, and so like his musical taste kind of went in a different way. It was really cool, actually. And so we played a bunch of cover gigs, like underage, at a bar in a small town. We used to play for free beer in behind the stage. The owner would bring us a couple pitchers of beer, and it was cool, man. It was fun. Yeah.
So you got started with the bands. I'm always with bands in high school, but I'm always curious. about how singers got started. Because to me, it's like, I find a lot of vocalists, a lot of singers, they like know in their mind that's what they want to do. Or it's like no one else wanted to do it. So they kind of just threw their hat in the ring. Like, okay, let's try to figure this out.
Yeah.
Was there a point when you started where you're just like, no, I think I got a handle on this?
Yeah. Like, I don't think I was that, like in terms of singing, I think like my technique and everything wasn't great. Like anything you start, it's not, you're singing it a certain way, but then you realize like you're using all throat or something like that to sing, and you're not really using your voice properly. But I actually did a lot of busking when I was when I was in college. I had I had part-time job, but I used to go busk, and I used to do that day in, day out, actually, like over the summer too, with another buddy of mine, Jason Peak. We used to go, I'm dropping names just in case you're listening. We used to busk actually on the weekends, and then we'd buy, a 26er with the money, and then get drunk in his little town in Rockland. And that was pretty much it. But when I was in college, though, I did actually busk. It was, I was in it, I was doing a lot of Beatles stuff, maybe 90% Beatles, throwing the odd Oasis tune here and there, U2 songs and stuff like that. And I just to kind of like supplement my income,
Two questions. What were some of your go-tos, your fan favorites for busking?
There were a few actually, like some of the U2 songs actually I did at the time. Honestly, I know a lot of people give them some grief, but man, at the time, I think, before they dropped free music on everybody's iPhone and everybody hated them.
The gift.
Like With or Without You. I played a lot of stuff actually off their album, All That You Can't Leave Behind, like the one that had Beautiful Day and all that. I think I played like 4 songs off that. But I also played like I said, mostly Beatles stuff. So even the earlier stuff like Can't Buy Me Love, Should Have Known Better, Blackbird, I played that off the White Album. I literally could play you at the time for over 100 songs front to back. Yeah.
Now, there's something to be said about like busking in that form, where like you just you are a songbook, you just know all these tunes. And the other part of it too is like the financial aspect of busking. Was it, you said you're supplementing some of the income?
It was better than my part-time job, I'll tell you that.
It's hard for me to word it, but it's one of those things where sometimes busking can be better than the job.
Yeah, I think too, like just the stuff I was playing too, and I think by the time I was busking, I think I was playing good, and I thought I sounded pretty good. And we actually, what's funny, we were busking one time. Like when I'm talking about busking, I did it mostly on my own. But one time I was busking with my buddy when we just started. Like it was like first few times busking, and a guy at the I think it's called the Cock and Lion pub on Spark Street. They just opened. It was their first night open. The guy came up to us, like the manager or something, and said, "Hey guys, do you want to come play a gig tonight?" And we're like, sure. So we went and played this gig just off the cuff inside this guy's pub. And looking back, I just remember I had no presence. Like I just remember the whole time I was staring down at the floor because I was too shy to have my eyes up at people, But it was kind of a cool, like off the cuff thing. And my parents came, and my buddy's parents came, and a few friends I think came. And yeah, it was kind of a off the cuff like that. It was kind of a cool thing to happen. But busking was a lot of fun, like until you break a string, and then yeah. I used to play, Mike. I used to play with 13 gauge on my acoustic, which is thick, in standard tuning, just because I was breaking so many strings at on a lighter gauge that it wasn't worth it. Like I was strumming so hard because I wanted the volume.
Yeah.
But so I had to put on like a thick gauge of string. But man, I had calluses. Like, yeah, it was crazy, man.
It's got a comment here from MCN director. I think I know who that is. As his cover gigs and busking tend to pay pretty darn good. I'd agree. And there's a lot of musicians out there. They don't understand. You can definitely supplement some of the income busking and doing cover gigs.
Yeah. Well, our cover gigs paying for free beer when we were 17, that didn't really pay too well, but hey, we were happy.
It's a start. The other thing too, because there's a common thread between a lot of musicians that I consider strong songwriters and consider you a strong songwriter. When you start out playing a lot of covers, you start thinking about songs that way, like the arrangements and just things about how they feel and stuff like that. And it's like when for some people, when they skip that step of really digging into covers, not just learning a couple for the band just to have them, but you say, 100 songs, it's like, I'm kind of guessing like of those 100 songs, probably 70% of them are hits, so like you get playing hit songs and like over and over and over again. When you go to write originals, it's hard to kind of, deprogram yourself from that for how those songs feel and how those choruses feel.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, I think it helped out with the songwriting aspect, just because you just know the way a song flows, and sort of, there's a verse and there's a chorus and there's a verse and there's a chorus and there's a bridge and there's a chorus, you kind of get the knack for some of those things. And I remember one of the first songs that I wrote, and it never actually saw the light of day. It was just like I couldn't even play it for you, but I remember playing, because the first time you write a song, you don't even know if you're any good, right? And I wrote I think just like a verse and a chorus, and I was at the end of it, I was like, you know what? I think I can write songs. I think I can do this. It was funny because I was being really hard on myself, trying to see, like, is this going to sound okay? Is this melody working? But yeah, it's a craft like anything else. The more you do it and the more you practice, the better it is.
It definitely is a craft. It's a muscle too, in a way. Or just the more songs you write, the thing, if you're trying to do an EP and it's got 5 or 6 songs on it, it's like, write 25 or 30 songs, and like people pick through them. But again, it's like when you look at, especially bands that are trying to get music on the radio and stuff like that, I always say, like, who are you competing with? And the way music is so accessible these days, like, you're really competing with everybody all the time. And, and the idea of trying to think too far outside the box, and it's like, well, you can, but if you're trying to serve up a cake or a pizza or a burger or something, it's like, don't go too far from what's kind of familiar. Like, there's ways that you can make it your own, but there's a pretty standard starting point with some of these things. So yeah, I just find that the cover gigs, for sure, it's like, I noticed a difference between some songwriters that like had that path and other ones that are still kind of fighting things sometimes. And it's like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, it might be a little bit more palatable if you just make these couple tweaks. There's a format or something.
Yeah.
Coming out of busking, when did you start Up Down in Ashes, or how did you was that your first serious band? Or
yeah, that was the first serious band, and that was like, I think I started getting that band together in like 2005 and maybe 2004, and like my drummer at the time, Sean, he like we played nonstop. Like, it was me and him, like, for a long time, and then we started auditioning people, and I don't know, just nothing really worked out, and then it just sort of we stopped. Like, we didn't even really, like, I think we met up a bunch of times, and then that was it. We couldn't really get anything going, and then I was in a shopping mall. I think I was in I hate to date myself, Music World. I was in like a Music World or an HMV or something, and he was there actually. And my girlfriend, she saw him and she's like, "Hey, isn't that Sean?" I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And she's like, and I wasn't even gonna do anything. I wasn't even gonna go say hi or anything, because I don't know, just I don't know. I called it for what it was. I was just like, "Hey, that was a moment in time and it's gone by," And she's like, "You know what? Go say hi to him. You never know. This could be it. This could be the moment that music starts up again or whatever." So I actually did that. I took her advice and I went up, "Hey man, how's it going?" And then we got together, and then and I think at that point then we started like getting people in the band. Like we tried so many different people in the band, and it wasn't really working. And then I'm like, "Hey, I know this guy. I used to play in a Metallica cover band with him. Like, around that high school time, and he joined us on bass, and then my drummer poached the guitar player from this place. No. But yeah, no, that, so we got that band going in like 2000. I think it was established in 06, and then we started like right away, because that was my life though, you know, like all I would do is try to go out to shows and go, you know, back in the days of MySpace. I didn't even know what MySpace was, and all of a sudden I figured out, hey, there's this thing called MySpace, and we can find other bands, and it was actually it was really cool actually at the time. But yeah, like just, you know, going to see shows, and then like getting our first gig at Mavericks, and then from there it was just like, you know, that's all we did is just play shows, and we used to practice every Saturday night while everybody else was out whatever having fun. We were actually practicing. We would start at like 9 and we would play till like we started like 8 and played till like midnight every Saturday. It was like religious, you know. Yeah, and then we just like, you know, fast forward a bit to 2007, we released our first album. 2010 we put out an EP, and then we put out Veins EP with Mike Langford, producer, mixer, and that was out in 2012, and that was like, yeah, when we put that out I was like, okay, we got something here. Hold on, we got something here, because it was just like, yeah, I just remember listening to it and I was like, holy shit, that's us.
Well, number one, that's always the reaction that I'm hoping if I'm working with a band or artist. I'm always hoping that they hear what comes back to the speakers, and they think that what you just said. I do want to go back for a second. You mentioned you went through a lot of musicians kind of looking for the right fit. What are some of the things that are like you'd say no, or like it's not a good fit, or like it's a lot of just chemistry or ability, or
a lot of it was skill and a lot of it was chemistry. Like those two things, if those two things aren't there, then it's just, you know. I remember once I went to jam with these guys. I think this was after my drummer and I initially, I had tried to make a go of it after that somehow, and I met up with these guys, and it was like from the first note I knew I was in trouble. I'm like, man, what am I doing here?
Describe the note.
I just could not wait for it to end, but I didn't have the heart to just like pick up and be like, guys, this ain't working. So I grinded it out. We played a bunch of tunes, but it was honestly so god awful. And at the end, I just said, they're like, you know, you can leave your amp here for next time, you know, leave it here for next time. And I'm like, no, I made up something. I can't remember. I just like, I gotta, you know, I'm going to rehearse and practice, and yeah, we'll see you next week. And yeah, that, but yeah, I mean, skill and chemistry, you know, I think chemistry is like huge, you know, if you don't have that, it's like, I mean, initially what I like to do is just meet up and have a beer. Like, can we even like hang out? Can we sit and hang out? I mean, if that can happen, you know, then we can see if we can play some music.
It's funny you mentioned like knowing right away that it might not be a good fit. And then I was going to ask like what was going on in the room? Like, what was it, the song, or just
one was a drummer, one was a drummer and one was a guitar player. And when I don't mean to make this sound like I'm a god instrumentalist, because I'm not or anything like that. But when I started playing and singing, they honestly were looking at each other like, and I just, it's not like I asked them like, hey, are you guys any good? You know what I mean? You just assume that we can all jam.
There's a level. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to say it again. I'm not an amazing musician. I'm not saying that, but they were just like, whoa, you know, like they just weren't serious musicians really. You know, it was just like, they were where I was at when I started playing, like just started playing, you know what I mean? Like in my bedroom with my guitar, like that kind of thing, you know? Maybe a little better than that, really. But,
both of us, many people listening to this, the audition process. It's like there could be books written about people's experiences in auditions and just jamming with people. But you mentioned, you know, just, you know, grabbing a drink or just hanging out for a bit. I've heard several pro gigs where that's how it works out. They assume that you're playing at a certain level. They want to see how you are as a person. Because like, especially if you're touring and stuff like that, there's probably 23 and a half hours a day, you're not actually making any music. So if you're not already there, and also you mentioned, every Saturday night getting together and playing for 3-4 hours, like if you're not into it and you don't want to hang out with people, because you could be hanging out, having drinks or watching the hockey game or something like that, or you could be practicing / jamming / just making music. Like you have the right group of people and that want to do that. So
no, that's very true. Like it's got to be, yeah. I think the chemistry is so important, so important.
It definitely it doesn't hurt, because I know some pro bands too where like outside of band they don't hang out that much because like they're there to work sort of thing. But
yeah,
there's a chemistry there as well, where everyone has respect for everybody, and like everyone is a pro player, has that level where you can go in and throw down basically and head out after. But yeah, especially in early stages, like chemistry is just it's crucial. It's crucial for a lot of bands. You mentioned, well, I don't say you skipped over a lot of stuff between, was it 2007 up to 2012? It was the same group there the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, like once we got our lineup, it was the same group. Towards the end when we were working on the EP with you, we had Steve joined the band as our drummer. But I mean, we like before that, it was the same 4 guys, and Steve joined, and now I play with Steve in the Red Rails, and yeah, we have, the 3 of us have amazing chemistry. Like we can hang out, we have our band chat, that we can just like chat about whatever, whenever, so it's great. Like, when you find a good group of guys to play with and you have that chemistry and friendship, it's like, yeah, I mean, it makes the band,
It makes it enjoyable and fun on several different levels.
Yeah. And even Down in Ashes, like I had so much fun in that band. Like that band was a lot of fun, man. It was, but just to be able to strike that a second time with another band, it's like, that, like, you don't get that lucky almost, from one band and then going into another band and being able to make both of them last quite a while, it's something else, I think.
The Veins EP comes out. You got some radio play on that.
Yeah, we got some radio play, and we had some cool stuff going on too. And our bass player, he ended up leaving the band, like just like out of the blue, and it kind of just jolted us. And it really oh my God, now what are you doing? We had some other people join the band, but I don't know, it was almost like we could never recover for some reason, like 100%. I don't know if we never really gave it a 100% shot. Like we tried and tried, but sometimes in retrospect, like, oh, maybe we should have tried a little more. I don't know, but the band did what it did, and then but yeah, like, yeah, he was a big part of the band, and even like chemistry wise, like we had great friendship and chemistry, it was but yeah, it just like, it just came out of the blue. Like it was a pretty shocking moment, it was like, oh my God. And we had like quite a lot of things going, we had our meeting with a booking agent, like a big booking agent too. Well, you would know Ralph James, and he came to see us play, and he really liked what we were doing and stuff. And we had a meeting with him. It was cool. So we had a lot of cool stuff going on. And I think the EP, because what he was saying, Ralph James, he was saying before, because he was sort of following us and we were on his radar, but he was never really digging the music. But once that EP came out, he was like, okay, you got the music now. He came to see our live show. I mean, we had those 2 components, so yeah. And then, we just couldn't get what we had after that. We couldn't get that same thing, that entity that we were like, I thought we had a great show and stuff. We just never really could duplicate that after.
With Eve leaving, the bassist leaving, was it personal? Was it stage in life? Was it, because that's one of the things I always find with bands too. It's like we inevitably get older, and sometimes like stage in life starts to happen a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was stage in life, and I also think too, like we were all planned, like the 3 of us, we were all like, okay, we're gonna go tour. We're gonna do, we were serious. We were going to drop everything. And like, if we get a call and we can go tour, we'll go tour. And I think he just, I don't think he was ready to commit to that. And I think, I just think different life stage for him, it is what it is. With a band, I'm not going to hold the guy to, come on, you have to play with us. I mean, if someone doesn't, it's a relationship. If you don't want to be in a relationship, you got to leave the relationship. Right. So I always kind of look at it that way. It would have been nice to have some time to kind of like be able to replace him, properly, but it just, it is what it is, man.
No, it is tough. And I said to many musicians, especially the bands, because it's what happens to the bands. It's like your early mid-20s, there's like a lot of musicians that drop out, late 20s, a lot of musicians that drop out. And like you find other like-minded musicians. So like you can make some stronger groups out of that, but it is tough because there's that line in the sand. And I don't know any successful bands that haven't had that serious talk about what you want to do, but then also knowing that it's all just talk until you have to put up. Until all of a sudden an opportunity comes up and it's like, okay, who here is ready to just eat ramen and quit their job and figure it out and sleep on a couch and or just make things work? Because I've seen it several times where like everyone's in and then it's like, here's an opportunity and it's like, I don't know if I can do this because there's a mortgage, there's a family, there's a car payment, can't leave the job. And it's just the harsh reality for a lot of bands and musicians where, you mentioned, if Ralph James is interested in your band or if a label's interested in your band, if you're not ready to go, there's another band that is.
That's right.
And that's the part that sucks because it's like you have to get that group together sort of thing. Not saying it can't come around again because it definitely can, especially if you're good people. They know that. They know that if they were following them to begin with, they already know there's personnel in there that they want to keep a relationship with. But it is tough, and you just don't know it until you're there. Because I've heard people, had one on the show, where the drummer quit like 2 days into tour. Band got signed, band's huge on the radio, and
that's
the drummer snuck out in the middle of the night, one of the hotels, and went off to the airport and flew home. He just didn't want to do it. And I'm just like, that's a great opportunity for somebody else because someone's getting a phone call the next day saying, hey, do you want to hop on a tour? But it's just until it's actually happening for some people, they don't really believe it. I think that's the other part of it too. It is tricky, but it's a conversation all bands got to have. But
no, it's true. And you know what? Like when I think about it too, like, I mean, that dude grinded it out. We played the shows to nobody. We drove the 6 hours to play to 4 people in a snowstorm. And then all of a sudden we got the thing that you strive to get to, the place where you aspire to get to, we're kind of getting there, and then he leaves. And so, it's not something I expected to happen, but it happened, When you hear those stories of like, oh, I wonder why that band, sort of fizzled out, or why, I wonder why, hey, it happens.
There's 1,001 reasons why.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the arc of a band or the life cycle of a band. Sometimes it's just like, there's nothing really wrong with it, but it's just sometimes you lose that chemistry. And it's tough because it's like, those are components of it. Not to keep going into like, with Down and Ashes, but it's like, at what point did you think, okay, maybe we should move on from this? Maybe we should kind of put this to bed and maybe move on from this.
I'd started Steve, his buddy, and now my buddy, Chris, our bass player right now in the Red Rails. Like they had already been playing and jamming together like here and there. And, I think it was probably Steve that said, hey, we should try like get together one time and try it out and let's see what happens. We'll get into a jam room and just see. And we tried it and it was great, man. We just like, it was a totally different sound, different approach. Like I never really wanted to do the same thing if I was going to do something else. But we just did it. And yeah, it just like took a life of its own. And then, and then Down in Ashes just sort of, Koji ended up moving back to Japan. And I think Koji knew too that, I don't know if we're going to be able to get going again like the way it was, and it just seemed like, you know, it was sort of like Down Ashes was sort of coming to an end. You could kind of feel it. There was a feeling that, you know, that yeah, it's like it's never been as good, you know, since Eve left. And and then we just started playing with the Red Rails, and it just sort of from there, like that was my new band, you know. Once Koji left, I mean, that was it. That was sort of, that was the nail in the coffin, so to speak, you know, because Koji, I mean, it was hard to replace Eve, but trying to replace Eve and Koji, like those two guys, they were like, you know, to their credit, I mean, they were both amazing for that band. It was like, you know, Koji was shredding, and he had such a cool look, and Eve too. I mean, he was singing backing vocals, you know, and playing great bass, and you know, like both guys were strong members of the band. You know, it's like you can't just replace that easily. So once Koji left, I think it was like, okay, that's I'm not going to try to make this thing like as good as it was. I don't know if it, you know, I don't know. Like I said, hindsight is everything in 2020, but like we just moved on.
No, Koji too, a killer guitar player, and it's tough because there's a vibe, and you mentioned the look too, just like how the band looked. It's like there's a product there.
Yeah,
you know, and it's one of those things where like it's
I
okay
hate to sound shallow, but yeah, no, it's true.
It's not. True. It's the truth. It's just and the thing. It's like I've said this to a few bands. I'm like, you get judged hard as soon as you look at a band, and then you decide if you want to listen to them. And when you looked at Down Ashes, it's like, okay, I'm curious to hear what's going on here, sort of thing. Because you just need a couple other bands to pepper in there, because Down Ashes was a modern hard rock band, but it had a different look to it. So you're curious to see like what does this sound like? Because so many bands kind of look the same, kind of sound the same, but when they do look different, it does help. But back to it, it's, you know, I think it's a tough transition for a lot of musicians that want to keep going, even though if they were really to look at it objectively, they would think, you know what, we could start fresh on something else. And when I heard the Red Rail stuff, and when I heard them, like, yeah, it's different from Down Ashes, but also like talking to you now about it, there was probably a little bit of a weight lifted off your shoulders. The idea where you could just play and kind of start something fresh with a little bit, not say less expectations, but just to see how it goes. Because if you're trying to keep something going, when you're trying to replace, band members, and then you have this other thing, they're just like, no, this feels more organic. Like this feels like it's happening. Because that's what I heard in the music.
Yeah, it was totally organic, you know, and we would just, honestly, we would get in the room and like, I mean, between Chris and Steve, like those guys would just lay it down, like the riffs, and I would just sort of fill in the little blank spaces here and there. It was really cool dynamic, you know, or it is a really cool dynamic, I should say, as soon as Chris gets back from Newfoundland. But yeah, so it just, I don't know, it's just they already had a really good chemistry playing together, and I just sort of joined in, and we had our first jam, and it was great, you know, there was something there. So then we were jamming in the beginning for like 3 times a week, and we were like just pumping out riffs like crazy and stuff. And and we just took a different approach. Like it was more, okay, let's do this DIY a little bit more and that kind of thing, you know, not as much pressure, like you said. And and, you know, we got to tour, play a whole bunch of shows, and then, you know, once Chris gets back, we can start playing some more shows, hopefully.
Was your first tour, would you say it was with Red Rails or with Down in Ashes?
Well, Down in Ashes, we did like some small, like, I think we did like just small, like 5-day, 3-day here and there kind of thing.
All right, my question for touring, did you have to do laundry?
I don't think so. Not for Down in Ashes. For the Red
Rails,
a
shorter tour until you got to do laundry.
Rails, yeah, sure. Again, that's what we were working towards with Down in Ashes, and I really feel like we were right there, you know. Actually, you know what? When we had our meeting with Ralph, he actually told us, he's like, I'd like to start by getting you guys some opening gigs with some of my bigger bands, and we were just like, what? You know. So I think we were really, you know, there was something that was going to happen, you know. But anyways, it all fell apart. But yeah, with the Red Rails, we did like a pretty good, like an East Coast tour. Did all the 401, like we went all the way to Newfoundland, all that stuff. That was great, man. It was a lot of fun, you know, touring in a van, and yeah.
As far as your expectations of touring, how did it match up to the reality of it?
You know what? When I was in my when I was in the Down and Ashes days, I mean, that's all I thought. I'm like, I would love to just like, see you later, never coming back. And now when I think about it, damn, that's hard. That is hard. Unless you're a huge band where you can just walk in, do your little sound check, all your crew is there to set everything up, and you just have to show up. That's not easy. You know, when it's just, you know, you miss your family, you miss everything at home, and it's just like you're never comfortable. You're sleeping in motel rooms or wherever, if you get that, you know. I mean, that we're pretty lucky in that sense. I think most of the time we had a motel or someone's place to stay that we knew or something. I don't think we ever really had to crash in the van. Maybe we camped a couple times outside, but that was more of our choosing. But yeah, man, I think it has a different, you know, you have a different view of it, you know, before you actually get to really do it. You're like, oh, this is going to be, and it is fun. It is amazing.
When it's fun, it's fun.
It's amazing going to a different city and seeing new things, but at the same time, you don't really see anything. You're there, you show up for your sound check. You're not really doing the tourist stuff. You know what I mean? You're just sort of like a lot of waiting, hurry up and wait. You know, you do your sound check super early, and sometimes you're playing super late. You know, you got to kill some time, but you know, it is what it is, man. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Is it glamorous? Nah, I don't think so.
No, not really. I'm always just curious to hear the expectations versus the reality, and again, the common thread is just like, it's the family,
yeah,
you know, and it's the home life, and it's just some of the comforts you mentioned, just like, you know, sleeping in basically a new place every evening,
yeah,
or wherever you can, sort of thing. And then one of my favorite questions too is, you know, did you see this? Did you see that? I'm like, drove by it.
Yeah,
but it's like there was a gap between, you know, 4 and 6:30, and I just slept in one of the benches in the venue.
Yeah, I think that's another thing. Another thing too is you never feel it. You're always tired, because even if you, you always have to pick up and you start driving to the next place, or if you actually, you know, if you can't really sleep in, because let's say you go to a motel. Okay, guys, checkout is like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock.
But
you just got back at 3 a.m. because like you played at like 12:30, and then you had to wait around for your gear to unload it. You know what I mean? Like, they should almost make something at them. If you're like a touring musician, they should give you like a late checkout. And we always asked for one, but I think the max we ever got was one time. I think they got 1 p.m. and that was like, whoa, 1 p.m. What? Yeah. But you just never feel, well, you know, Mike, you just never feel refreshed. You're just always tired. Always tired.
Yeah, I half joke, like, the best shape, physically and mentally, that you're ever going to feel on tour is the day that you leave.
Yeah.
After that, it's just you're struggling to keep your, you know, diet together and your exercise together. Sleep just goes out the window for so many people.
Yeah.
Especially, again, I would consider you a heavy lifter in your bands, where you're probably worrying about tour managing and just keeping on track of stuff and advancing shows. And it's like that stuff takes time to juggle all that stuff. So it's not often, it's very often that, you know, that band member is usually the first one awake and the last one to go to bed. And and if you're driving too on top of that, it is just a grind.
Yeah, it's a grind. And you know, you got to do all the social media stuff that goes along with it. You know, every day, you know, you got to post this, you got to post that to the right places. And yeah, I mean, I should automate that stuff next time. A little bit.
Well, we can. We got tools to do that stuff now. But it's funny.
Yeah.
You even mentioned that's date ourselves. But even back in the MySpace days, it's just like there's a lot of social media that's evolved.
Yeah,
over the last 15 years at this point, really think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, back with the touring thing, I'm always curious that just, you know, what it was actually like and how it was. Any advice that you give to somebody that hasn't been on tour yet?
I would say just do it, because honestly, it's an experience, man. It's an experience. I would do it again. I would do it again in a heartbeat. You know, it is a lot of fun, but just remember, you're not going to be it's not a tourist attraction. You're not going to be seeing La Ronde and all this, all these cool little sightseeing tours. You're not going to be doing that stuff. That's for sure.
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Any of those early tours, did anyone party a little too hard, not realizing that maybe there's another 3, 4, 5 shows you got to get through?
I don't think so.
You're good?
I don't think so. I think we were all we were all good. We were all good. Yeah.
Because that's another one that's funny is you can see some bands where you're like, oh, they're out on their first tour, and then like 2 days into it, everyone looks just like a train wreck, and you're like, yeah, you can't drink and party like that every night. It's gonna catch up to you like immediately.
I remember when we were booking our tour, I took care of like the 401 stuff, and Chris, because he's from Newfoundland, he took care of a lot of the East Coast, and Steve did. I can't remember. He did like a bunch of the other dates. And I just remember just a side story, one of the venues gets back to him a year later after he had sent his initial like, hey, would like to book this date. Like, so let's say June 18th, like a year later, like they contact him, that date, we can't do that date, for whatever reason. There's always those little things that happen, and it's never happened to us, but I've seen it happen where, and I'm sure you have, where bands post on their social media, like for whatever reason, like they get to the venue to unload and the venue's like it's closed. There's nothing going on. Like it's just like the doors are locked and it's like the show wasn't confirmed, or I don't know, or they put another band in there or something.
Oh, double booked. That's always good.
Double booked. It's never happened to us, but I always thought about that. I'm like, ooh.
Or venues closing down mid-tour. That's a good one. You're just like, okay, I know this was booked a few months out, but I could have let people know instead from like basically now that the venue's been closed the last 2 weeks. So yeah. Well, there's always those little things. We were pretty fortunate. None of that stuff ever really happened. Everything was pretty smooth in terms of like. Oh, dropped audio for a second there.
Are we good?
Oh, yep, you're back.
Okay, perfect.
All good?
Yep.
What were you saying before that, before you got cut off?
I was just saying, like, luckily for us, everything was pretty smooth, We didn't have any major events like that happen. Venues are closed and all that.
It's always good. It's always good when a tour can go smooth. Any last thing I'll say, any flat tires?
No, we didn't have any. No, we didn't have any of that stuff either, actually. Like, we were pretty lucky. From what I remember. We did get pulled over by the cops. I was speeding on the way to like a radio interview.
Oh, there's a reason for that. That's okay.
Well, we were actually running late and it was a rented van. And the funny thing was, in a rented van, like there's no seats in the back, right?
Yeah.
So this was one of our first shows. And I think we were going to I think it was Kingston, like is it K103? Anyways, we were going to Kingston to do this morning interview, and I was just like gunning it down the 416 and sirens go on and the guys are behind me and they're literally sitting in lawn chairs. They're in lawn chairs and the cop walks up to the van. He looks in the back, like through the back window, and then he comes over and he didn't say anything about the lawn chairs. But he did give me a speeding ticket. And then we got to our on-air interview a little bit late, but whatever. That was about it. No flat tires, just,
Kudos to that officer for understanding that bands have it hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
So just understand it.
Yeah.
I was asking about the flat tire thing. So another one of those things with touring, because like usually tours don't go smoothly. And when we talked about chemistry in a band, it's like everything's great when everything's fine. But like so often things are not fine on tour, and sometimes even something like a flat tire or some van issues or trouble. Again, venues double booked or hotel room doesn't have your reservations or something like that. Those little things, because of the stress of touring, can just set people off. And then it can escalate so quickly. So I'm always curious just to hear if there's anything like that or just how the band handled it. Or
we were pretty even. Like. I got to say, we're pretty, everybody kept their cool pretty good. I mean, there's always like little moments, but nothing more than moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody yelling and screaming matches. That never happened. No fist fights.
Just people understanding, no one ever intentionally books a venue that's going to close. You know, booking agents are like, okay, let's just mix things up. We'll get a Saturday night in a good city, and then we'll make sure the venue's going to close, and they're going to love that.
No, we were lucky in that sense for sure. But you know, I could see how all that could easily happen. You know, all that could easily happen. Blues Fest
in Ottawa, was that with Red Rails?
That was with Red Rails. Yeah, that was 2016. And we'd applied to Blues Fest, but we didn't actually hear back. And, you know, all the bands had been booked. All the local acts who were on the bill had been booked and everything. And I got a call or an email, I think. And I'm reading the email and they're like, would you like to accept? I don't remember, you know, it was a letter, you know, with some details about, and I look at the time slot, it's like 8 p.m. I believe it was 8 p.m. on like June 16th. And I look up the date and my eyes were all wide and it was like, you know, before the Red Hot Chili Peppers on the main stage, you know, so we were on the main stage here and they were on like the main stage across, because they never really had like two bands back. Like they don't, you know, for the main stages, like one would end on this stage so that while that band's tearing down the other one, you know. And I was just like, I texted the guys. I'm like, hey guys, you guys doing anything on this date at this time? And they're like, no, why? And I'm just like, you guys want to like play before the Chili's? They're like, what? They didn't believe it, you know. But that was a crazy, awesome gig. That was an awesome gig. Yeah.
I wanted to bring that because like that's a pretty large festival.
Yeah.
So how many years has that been running?
That's I almost want to, that's like in the 90s for sure. Like I almost want to say 20, I should know this, like 26 years, 25 years. But yeah, it's been around for a long time. And originally I believe it was like a blues festival, you know? And every once in a while you still get people like, hey, these bands are not blues. Why is it Blues Fest? But they've already rehashed that a million times. Like, we're not changing the name. It's just easier. Let's just keep it this way. But yeah, it's a massive 10-day festival. They bring out like, you know, I mean, Rage Against the Machine was supposed to be here last year. Everything got canceled, you know. It follows along. There's a lot of groups who do like that festival, and they'll do like the festival in Quebec City and then a few other large ones, you know, so they hit the circuit. So I think they are booked to play again next year, Rage Against the Machine, which I'm stoked, because I actually had full festival passes and I kept my passes. I didn't like get my refund or anything. But yeah, it's a massive festival. It's a lot of fun, man. It's just like, you know, every band that you want that you would never really be able to get to see in Ottawa, you know, a lot of big bands roll through it. So we're lucky to have it.
Had you been applying to that festival before?
Yeah.
And that was the first time?
Yeah, we played a couple times actually with Down in Ashes, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, we opened for, we played with Alexis on Fire the first time with Down in Ashes. That was an awesome gig too. And the Red Rails we played a couple times as well. So it's it's a great, it does a lot for the local acts, you know. A lot of local acts get to like have an amazing time and play a great stage at a huge festival, you know.
Being a music fan and someone there to watch the bands, being on the other side of the stage, being behind the stage, like what was that like first time?
Oh, it's
seeing the behind the scenes, like how it actually functions and stuff.
It's great. It's wild, actually. Like when you look at like the stuff that goes into these festivals, it's just like, you know, and you see, hey, there's that person and there's that singer from that, you know, because they're all just kicking around, you know, in backstage, you know, and it's really cool. Actually, a funny story is Steve and I. This is like not even like a band thing, but Steve knew this guy from Jägermeister, and you know, I don't know if you know Montebello Rock Fest. It's a huge festival with like heavier rock bands and stuff in Montebello, Quebec. Yeah. And Steve actually got a call and he's like, hey, do you know anybody who does photographs? Like our photographer dropped out or something for Jägermeister. They needed a photographer to go shoot some bands like Marilyn Manson and this and that. And Steve's like, yeah, we do our own stuff. We do our own photos. Yeah. Steve calls me. He's like, "Hey, you want to go shoot this band and this band?" I'm like, "Man, let's go." So we rolled up to Rockfest, and we were not like we got there. So the first day we get there, they denied us because they didn't even have our passes ready or something. They're like, "Come back tomorrow. Yeah. Come back tomorrow with your cameras. We'll have your passes." We show up, and honestly, it was like we didn't have the big fancy lenses, and all these photographers have their 2 cameras, one with a. And we show up with like a little $100 lens, and we took some kick-ass shots, but we shot like Marilyn Manson, but to the point of being in like behind the stage and everything. It was cool because we were like, we were in the pit shooting all these crazy bands. So that was a whole other experience, like we've been backstage as musicians, but then now we're in the pit photographing like Marilyn Manson and Alice, oh man, all these crazy guys. Alice Cooper, and Lamb of God.
Sometimes you just find yourself places. I want to say, did that what's it called? Imposter syndrome? Did that set in when you start seeing the other photographers doing stuff, and you're just like, all right, we're here. I think
they were looking at us like, what the hell are these guys doing? Like they're
so good.
They've got
one camera,
like prosumer like DSLRs, and they've got a 1.8 millimeter lens on their camera that's like $100 lens, and they're shooting all these bands. And for us, because those photographers, they didn't have to move around to get any shots because they could zoom in. They could, our zoom was you got to go up 10 feet and you got to take the shot,
See?
But we got amazing shots, actually. Like we got some crazy good shots, It's not like we knew how to do photography. It's not like we just bought the cameras that day and, but that was a lot of fun. Like Steve, kudos to you, Steve. You got us into that cool. That was such cool. And we had the passes and the badges. Yeah. Like we had no business being there. We were there though.
Sometimes you just say yes and you figure it out.
No, that's it. That's it.
The worst thing that can happen is they just kick you out or you get fired or whatever, but just say yes and you figure it out.
That's right. And we did. We did.
That's pretty good story. As far as naming bands, because that's another question I'm always curious about. Down in Ashes, the Red Rails. Did you name those? Was it like a group thing? How did you come up with those names?
It took a while. I remember Down in Ashes, we were floating around all kinds of names, and I come up with it. I don't remember how I came up with it, but I just did. I kind of liked it. It was more of like, I like the sound of it, And then the Red Rails too, it was just more of a, I thought I came up with it. I could be wrong, but I thought I came up with it. At the end of the day, I thought the Red Rails, I think I brought that to the table. I could be wrong, but it was just more of like, hey, this, because it is hard to name a band. And one of the biggest things is, okay, this sounds cool, but is there a .com for it, or is it taken? That's our first rule. And all the social media, if any of these band names have like anything that's already taken by something, then we don't take it. That was like our rule. That's the way it was. So the Red Rails, we were able to snag everything up, every handle for every single thing we could possibly get. That's the way it was.
Oh, it's important. Someone who's gone through the meat grinder of having to like rename a band.
Yeah.
Because that's one of those things. It's like number one, if you can't get the .com, you're probably going to have problems. Also just like checking Spotify. There's a band recently that kind of revamped itself, and when they announced their name, I checked Spotify and I'm like, guys, there's already this here. Like, don't do this. This is not a good thing. And they're like, oh, it'll just be bigger. I'm like, no, that's not a good enough reason to do that. It's like, it's not going to work. But it is good advice for any bands or artists too. It's just like, make sure that you're not in anybody's garden when it comes to trying to rebrand something. Yeah. And say too, it's like, it's easier than ever to do the research on that.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need to go to the patent office or trademark office or anything like that.
Just Google it.
Just Google it. If it shows up, it's there. Also, the idea too, like I was wondering if there's any visuals that came along with either of the names, because I've heard bands too where like they'll just go through fonts. Like they'll put a band name idea and go through fonts and see if anything sparks inspirato or something like that.
That's cool. Well, the Red Rails, like a rail, the Red Rail is a bird. It's like an extinct bird, I believe, from Madagascar. When we did look into it a little further, we liked the name, and then we sort of took that bird and we put it into our like visual stuff at the beginning, Well, actually, in our album, I mean, the whole cover, like this, I can't remember his last name, Liam. Anyways, he did the album cover. Like, he actually did a painting that was scanned, and that became our album cover, A Living Fiction. So that sort of was the imagery for that band. It was like that bird, but we didn't mean it to be that. But it's when we Googled it, that's what it was. You know, so that's how that.
Yeah, there's just always there's a lot of visuals that seem to come up with band names, and even just logos and stuff too. Just putting ideas down. It's a cool name, but like, does this work in the bigger picture? And even not to get back to like festivals like Blues Fest, it's like when you see ad mats that just all have the same font versus the ad mats where they put a lot of the band's logos on it. It's like when you kind of squint and look at that, and you're just like, okay, some of this stands out in good ways and other things get kind of lost.
Yeah.
And just making sure that the amount of characters in a band name, like the actual letters, like how they stack or how they work like horizontal. There's so many things to take into consideration with a band name.
And I think getting a logo, like an actual logo, I think that's huge too, you know, in a sense, like it's got to be. And I think we went through this, like we went through the ringer with Down and Ashes trying to get a logo, and it was always, we never really had it down. But then in the end, I think it was like the simplest, you know, when you look at any even like any brand, you know, they have the simplest logo almost, you know, most bands, you know, there's always the exception, but most bands,
metal bands,
like the simpler it is, the longer it's going to stand the test of time, I think, you know?
No, for sure. Even just symbols too. Like thinking about Red Hot Chili Peppers, it's like they had that circular logo that just seemed to, you know, that was their branding. It's just like if you were getting a Chili Peppers tattoo, it's like you probably wouldn't get the band name, you just get the logo, sort of thing. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. It's like the bigger picture. Sometimes it evolves over time, and other times I've seen bands just come out of the gate, and they seem to have a lot of stuff together. The other thing I was just thinking about it now, it's like, you coming from Down and Ashes where like you had that arc and you understood like if we were to start again, some of the things to take into consideration. It feels like with Red Rails, like getting on the Blues Fest, like all of that work that had been done before still helped get the new band going.
Oh, big time. There was a lot of stuff we didn't have to like, you know, we didn't have to like try to figure it out because we'd already figured it out with Down and Ashes. There was a lot of that stuff, and even coming out of the gate, we had a website, we had a logo, and we had, you know, we were just further ahead right off the bat than it was to try to make that stuff happen. You know, like how do we do this? How do we even do a website? Like what's this? What's that? You know, we had photos, we had like everything ready to go from the day that we launched the band. I think we launched it with like a promo video, actually. Just like, it was only a demo I think we had put up, but just something, you know?
Yeah, there are, not to go back to the Down Ashes again, but it's like there's so many examples of bands holding on to it because they feel like they've done too much work to let it go. And there's that concept of that opportunity cost. It's like, but if you just put that to bed and move to the next one, you could start fresh with all of that knowledge. You know, it's like you ask a lot of people in life, it's like, well, if you started again with everything you know right now, like what would you do differently? You know, band or anything in general, it's just like you would make some different decisions with certain things. So I just wanted to throw that there too, just the idea of like starting a new band doesn't mean starting from square one. You still retain all your knowledge, and also just, you know, being in a band with Steve before that as well. It's like you already have some of that chemistry, and it's just crucial. Sometimes there's a point where just start something fresh and move on from there.
Yeah, and it was good to start fresh, actually. You know, like it was like a feeling of like something about a clean slate. There was something about that was really like, you know, this let's see what we can do with this, like just like a clean slate, nothing already written on the wall. You know, like let's just see what happens. You know, and I mean we've done a lot. You know, I've been happy with what we've done, and we got more to come as soon as Chris gets back. So.
I've had you over an hour. I got one more question. I was kind of curious about. You're a family man. You're married. You got a little one. How is balancing the family life and the music life?
You know, it's I think like when you were talking about the touring stuff too, like now that I have like a child and stuff, I think the touring seems less like I would want it less now than I ever did, you know. But the balance is just like, you know, even Dave Grohl says, you know, family first. He's always saying family first, you know. It's a little bit easier when you can have other people set things up and he doesn't have to do as much of that
if you have
music business stuff. Yeah. But you know what? I think it's just and all the guys now, you know, we're in the chat. Before we used to be like, hey guys, let's jam, and now we're like, oh, your baby's so cute. Love that pic. But yeah, no, the balance is there, and I think because all of us in the band are in the same spot right now. Like there's not like one guy that's out partying all the time. Like we're all kind of in the same life stage. It makes it pretty easy, you know. Like we all get it, you know. But we'll put in the work when there needs to be work. You know, that's all.
I guess just being more efficient with the time.
Yeah,
you know, when you're together.
For sure, and then understanding that, oh man, and we you know, we've always been like pretty religious on like, you know, meeting up to play and stuff. But now it's like if something comes up and you can't rehearse for whatever reason, or you know, it's no big deal unless you got a huge show tomorrow.
Well, I was just gonna say too, it's having the trust between the band members where people can do some of their homework on their own time. Mm-hmm. And just make it count when you do get into rehearsal space. Because yeah, like life happens, especially if you got a family, and it's like, well, you can't hold that against people. Yeah, you know, and I believe too, you know, family does come first. And when you talk about the touring, it's like that itch to get on the road, it can start to not to say disappear, but it can kind of shrink a little bit once you have things going on at home, and it's hard for some musicians to kind of grasp that, but just like balance those two. So I was just curious about that, and you know, how it worked with the band, how it worked with you and your family, and because you know, like you're in a position where like you were playing for fun, but at the same time, like there's a bigger picture around it. There's a business model around it. Yeah, and I'm not one to like on the whole music thing. Like if I'm gonna do music, like it has to also be, there has to be some purpose to more than just meeting up to jam. Like I have to, like, you know, we have to put music out, or we have to do something. Like I'm not really into just like meeting up to meet up. Like even though it's fun to jam and stuff, like I've always been about more like the bigger picture, you know. I'm not as obsessed with staying up till 2 a.m. to get like a graphic as perfect anymore and stuff. But you know, I just like that. And I think it also boils down to just being like, I don't know if the word competitive is the right word to use really, but you know, you have, like, I've got some sort of drive to actually want to do stuff and do it on a bigger level than just, you know, playing in a basement. And a show every 4 months. Yeah. Like, I mean, and that's fine. I mean, it's not like we've been super active. I mean, COVID doesn't help, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just like, you know, I want to put out like new music and I want to do stuff, you know. It's part of leaving something behind musically, you know, like a musical legacy, so to speak, you know. No, absolutely. Like we can document things these days, so why not? Yeah. Case in point. I think this is probably a good place to wrap things up. I'm still very curious once things do open up to maybe touch base later in the year. And cool. Just to see how things are going. Anything else you want to mention or add before we sign off? No, thanks for having me, man. This has been great. Had a lot of fun chatting with you about music, and it's been a while, you know. So not being able to really chat in a loud club, sometimes doing it like this is that too. Is awesome. Because one thing to kind of text or just kind of like meet up, I guess, in Facebook comments for a bit, like in a comment thread. But yeah, it's been pretty nice. Be able to catch up with some like people on here, like, because this is as close to real life as we've got in a while. That's it. To hear voices. Yeah. Just want to throw this up there. Matt says Kim rules. I agree. Matt. What's up, Matt? Matt's in a band called Hearts and Minds, by the way. Great band. We actually got to tour with them down in Ashes. We got to tour with them. Yeah. We did a 5-day tour along the 401 with those guys. Yeah. Oh, we'll save the stories from that. Yes, sir. For another time. Make sure you get Matt to sign off on that. Where can everybody find you?
theredrails.com. All the handles, we own all the handles. Facebook.com/theredrails, Instagram.com/theredrails. Yeah.
Excellent. That's what other thing I was going to think of too. It's like if you can find a band name with under 15 characters, that's the other thing too, because of Twitter.
Oh,
Twitter caps you at 15 characters.
Everything else, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, everything else kind of you can do whatever, but that's one of those things to keep in mind too. You got a wicked band name, and then it's like, it's too long for Twitter. The Twitter handle. There's always something.
Yeah.
The information where to find Kim and the Red Rails, I'll put that in the details below if you're watching the replay on YouTube in particular. Just want to thank everybody again for tuning in tonight, taking part in the chat. Anything we didn't get to, the questions, we'll answer those later. Once again, my name is Mike Langford. This has been DearBands Live. Thanks again to our guest tonight, Kim Vincent. That's our time tonight. Talk to you guys later.